Only a handful of climbers once dared to face Himalayan giants like K2 and Annapurna, where fatality rates soared above 25%, and victory often meant the loss of fingers, toes, or lives. But today, mountains test not only skill and endurance, but also cultural lines and ethical limits. Why have these peaks become a high-stakes crossroads of ambition, survival, and reverence? What hidden costs continue to shape every ascent? In June 1950, Maurice Herzog and Louis Lachenal reached the summit of Annapurna, carving their names into history as the first to stand atop an 8,000-meter peak. Their journey was anything but a solitary triumph. Behind them stretched a caravan of more than 400 porters, hauling supplies through monsoon-soaked valleys and up icy slopes. The French expedition relied on siege-style tactics, establishing a string of high camps, fixing ropes, and ferrying loads for weeks. Each push higher demanded more strength, more bodies, and more time exposed to the mountain's dangers. The cost was severe. Herzog and Lachenal returned from the summit barely alive, their hands and feet ravaged by frostbite. Medical reports detail how both men lost fingers and toes to gangrene. Herzog's own account describes the agony of amputations without anesthesia, the feeling of triumph replaced by months of pain and recovery. The physical price paid for glory became a cautionary tale, echoing through the climbing world. Annapurna's summit had been won, but at a cost that forced climbers everywhere to reconsider how much suffering a single peak could demand. This approach, throwing resources and manpower at the mountain, set a pattern for the era. Siege-style expeditions became the standard for Himalayan giants, blending ambition with logistics on an almost military scale. The legacy of Annapurna's conquest was not just a line on the map, but a new blueprint for how far humans would go and what they were willing to lose in the pursuit of the world's highest places. On K2, the cost of ambition was measured not just in effort, but in lives. In August 1954, an Italian team led by Achille Compagnoni and Lino Lazzadelli completed the first ascent after more than a dozen failed attempts by others. Their victory came at the end of a campaign that saw 5 fatalities on that expedition alone. K2's slopes, notoriously steep and exposed, offered no forgiveness. By 2023, the mountain's fatality rate stood at roughly 1 in 4, with 87 deaths for 377 summits, earning it a reputation as the Savage Mountain. Nanga Parbat, known as the Killer Mountain, proved even deadlier in the years before its first ascent. German expeditions in the 1930s lost entire teams. 16 climbers perished in a single avalanche in 1934. And 8 more died in 1937. By 1953, nearly 30 had died trying to reach the summit. That year, Austrian climber Hermann Buell made a solo push that lasted 41 hours without supplemental oxygen, returning frostbitten and hallucinating. His survival was hailed as miraculous. But the question lingered. How many lives should a summit cost? The relentless toll of these expeditions forced climbers and organizers to ask hard questions about responsibility and risk. The deaths on K2 and Nanga Parbat were not just accidents. They became catalysts for a deeper reckoning over the ethics of pushing human limits in places where nature holds all the cards. On Everest, the numbers tell their own story. In 1953, when Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay reached the summit, the feat was seen as almost impossible. 7 decades later, Everest has become the world's highest stage for commercial adventure. In 2022 alone, more than 800 climbers stood on its summit, a record that would have been unimaginable to early mountaineers. Permits now number in the hundreds each spring, with climbers from every continent lining up for a shot at the top. But the mountain's popularity comes at a cost that cannot be measured in dollars or Instagram posts. Since organized expeditions began in 1922, more than 300 people have died on Everest. That is roughly 1 death for every 10 summits, a statistic that lingers in the minds of guides and climbers alike. The risk is not just theoretical. In 1996, a sudden storm trapped dozens near the summit, leading to the deaths of 8 climbers in a single day. The disaster made headlines around the world and exposed the dangers of a system where ambition, inexperience, and profit can collide at 8,000 meters. Guided expeditions now dominate the south side of Everest. For a price, clients receive support from veteran Sherpas, fixed ropes, and bottled oxygen. This client-guide economy has made the summit more accessible than ever before, but it has also created new vulnerabilities. Crowding on narrow ridges can turn a slow descent into a life-or-death race against exhaustion and weather. Each spring, the mountain becomes a test not just of skill, but of judgment, and of how much risk climbers, guides, and the industry are willing to accept. Some mountains remain untouched, not because they are unclimbable, but because they are considered sacred. In Nepal, Machapuchare, known as the Fishtail Peak, has stood off limits since the late 1950s. Revered by Hindu and Buddhist communities as the home of Shiva, Machapuchare's summit has never been officially reached. Nepal's government enforces a strict ban, honoring local beliefs over the lure of first ascents and tourist revenue. The policy is clear: spiritual sanctity outweighs the global race for summits. Across the border in Bhutan, a royal decree in 1994 halted all climbing above 6,000 meters. Peaks like Gangkar Puensum, the world's highest unclimbed mountain, are protected by law. Internal government memos reveal a debate between economic opportunity and spiritual risk. In the end, the monastic council's stance prevailed. The mountains are more valuable as sacred spaces than as destinations for foreign climbers. Elsewhere, the boundary between access and exclusion takes different forms. On Mount Athos in Greece, 1,000-year-old ban bars women from setting foot on the peninsula. Rooted in Orthodox Christian tradition, the rule preserves the monastic way of life, making the mountain a living relic of religious devotion. Not all dangers are found on the world's highest peaks. Mount Hood in Oregon stands just 3,429 meters, yet has claimed over 130 lives. Its accessibility draws thousands of hikers and climbers each year, many underestimating the risks posed by sudden storms and hidden crevasses. For some, the greatest threats are not altitude or technical difficulty, but the illusion of safety on familiar ground. Reinhold Messner's ascent of all 14 8,000-meter peaks without supplemental oxygen stands as a rebuke to the era of heavy logistics. Messner's philosophy, move light, move fast, leave no trace, clashes with the legacy of siege-style expeditions and the realities faced by those who make such climbs possible. For decades, Sherpas have been the backbone of Himalayan mountaineering, risking their lives to fix ropes, ferry loads, and break trail through danger zones like the Khumbu icefall. Despite earning several times the average Nepali wage, many Sherpas face far greater risks than their foreign clients, with fatality rates 2 to 3 times higher per season. Their labor is essential, but recognition and compensation often lag behind the dangers they shoulder. The debate over what constitutes ethical climbing is not confined to the Himalayas. In 2012, a pair of climbers removed hundreds of bolts from the famous compressor route on Cerro Torre in Patagonia. The original bolts, placed in the 1970s by Cesare Maestri, had turned the granite spire into a battleground over style and environmental impact. Some called the bolt removal vandalism. Others saw it as a restoration of the mountain's integrity. The controversy underscored a growing divide between those who view mountains as arenas for conquest and those who see them as fragile spaces demanding respect, not domination. Messner's words echo here. Understanding your limits means accepting that not every summit is worth any cost. Glaciers that once defined the world's great peaks are vanishing at a pace no climber from the past could have imagined. On Everest, the Khumbu Glacier has thinned and retreated so rapidly that base camp now sits on exposed rock and running water weeks earlier than it did a generation ago. As permafrost thaws, slopes that seemed stable for decades release sudden rockfall, turning familiar routes into minefields. Guides on Mont Blanc now avoid the Grand Couloir in high summer, shifting climbs to shoulder seasons to dodge the daily barrage of stonefall unleashed by melting ice. The consequences ripple far beyond technical difficulty. Rockfall and avalanches claim more lives as seasons grow shorter and weather patterns become less predictable. In response, authorities in the Alps and in the Himalayas have begun testing new controls, digital permit caps, mandatory GPS trackers, and pilot programs using drones to monitor hazards in real time. Early results from these initiatives show promise. Rescue teams equipped with drone footage and live location data have reduced response times by as much as 20% in trial runs. For regulators, the challenge is clear. Adapt quickly, or risk seeing the mountains become deadlier with every season of melt. Climbing's greatest risk isn't just the mountain, it's believing we're above consequence. As climate destabilizes peaks and cultural tensions sharpen, every summit demands new humility. The next decision, by climber or policymaker, shapes not only who returns, but whether these places endure. The world's highest stakes remain far from settled.